All right, we're live. So, hi everyone, it's 6 p.m. in Kiev, and it means that we're about to begin our live Q&A session. And I'm very proud to have two very inspiring people here. First of all, next to me is Shaun Pinner, who's a British veteran who served in Ukraine since 2018. Then he fought in the siege of Mariupol, and then he has been held captive in Russia. Next to him is Nestor Barchuk, who's an Azov Brigade soldier. With his background in international law, one of his duties is advocating for Russia being held accountable for multiple war crimes, including the Olenivka camp tragedy. So one of his activities is he works closely with the Azovstal Families Association, which is led by Katerina Prokopenko. So hi, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Hi, thanks for having us.
And thanks so much for being here. So together we will speak about the reality of Russian captivity for Ukrainian POWs. We're going to speak about multiple violations of international humanitarian laws by Russia. We're going to touch the topic of the Free Azovstal Defenders movement and many other questions that you guys are going to ask. So first of all, to give you guys the better understanding of what's going to happen, I would like to start with you, Nestor. If you could explain what are your duties as a part of the Azov Brigade, and if you could introduce us to what is the Association of the Azovstal Families and the Free Defenders movement, please.
Sure. Thanks. My main areas of focus are actually, as you have said, I'm advocating for Russia being held accountable for its war crimes. My main focus is international relations of the brigade and advocating international investigation of the Olenivka execution, and also international advocacy of the exchange of Azov prisoners of war. You asked about the Azovstal Family Association. So the Association of Azovstal Defenders families is the NGO that is headed by Katerina Prokopenko. Also, this association, this NGO, is also advocating spreading the word and raising awareness about the Azov prisoners of war. They're doing a great job. We're working closely with them, and one of their initiatives is the rallies, the weekly rallies that are taking place in Kyiv, and other cities. Sure, and we endorse other cities, not only in Ukraine but abroad to join the initiative. Those initiatives main goal of those rallies are to raise awareness and to also spread the word about the prisoners of war. They are still there, and also to support them, so that to show that they're not forgotten, and people remember and fight for their freedom here.
I already have a question from someone from Instagram who is called Valdemar1219. He's asking how many Azov fighters or Azovstal defenders, basically everyone who was in Mariupol, are still being held in captivity.
I know about the Azov Brigade. This is the public information. There are still up to 900 Azov soldiers being held in captivity in different... more than 100 of them are convicted because they not allegedly, but as Russian law enforcement said, they are the part of the terrorist organization, so they are being held in jails or in places all over Russia and in temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine.
We're going to speak about that topic a little bit later. We're going to touch that more in depth. Thanks for your answer, Shaun. To you. Everyone asks, how are you doing? How's your process of recovery? Do you get enough help in the process of recovery? And a personal question for me, can someone actually be fully recovered from what you have experienced?
Oh, there's a lot to unpack there. Yeah, I'm doing fine. I've slept like a baby since being exchanged. It's different circumstances for me as well, because I was actually in the British Army for 9 years. I was also trained in resistance training, SEER training, survival, escape, resistance, and evade training. I'm also at the latter years of my military career. I'm finished now, so I was sort of 48 when I was captured by the Donetsk People's Republic. And so really, I'd had an extensive background in the military of 13 years, 9 war tours, 4 of those on the front lines in Ukraine, 2 of those as a commander on a position on the front lines. So my background is military. I was you know, if I was going to get captured, I knew exactly the sort of things that I was expecting. It wasn't going to be the Ritz-Carlton. I knew exactly what potentially Russia was all about. And so yeah, I mean, I teach on it now. I've written a book about it. It's therapeutic for me to talk at conventions. I've just come back from the Veterans Convention in the Road to Recovery Convention in Lviv, where we talk about the veterans, not just Ukrainians, but the ever-increasing internationals that are now coming over to fight for Ukraine. So it's put me in quite a unique bracket. I'm also able to talk to PTSD and you know, people that really do struggle with that sort of medical condition. Yeah, so my work's ongoing, you know, and I'm here now talking with you.
Right. Actually, as so there is a certain belief among Westerners that Free Azovstal Defenders is only about people from Azov Brigade, or only from only from Azovstal. I know you've been captured in a different steel plant, which is called Ilich. Yeah. So could you elaborate on that? Is it true? Is it not true?
I can talk probably on a personal level because I was there, and probably leave it to talk about the legal side. So to the Western audiences, you know, Azov is a region. It's Azov Sea. There are plenty of other companies called Azov Garages and Car Wash, you know, and we've got Azov Style. If you're talking to a Western audience, generally, they would have heard of Mariupol, but not necessarily know the intricacies and the defence of Mariupol in its total. But they will have heard of Azov Style, because it was the last bastion of resistance in Mariupol, and the media put it onto that, you know, pedestal at the time and give it the coverage. So if I was to walk in UK, people will hear, oh, you were Azovstal. No, I was Ilich. And then it's really the first domino in a set of dominoes that you knock over. The first one being Mariupol, then the second one's, you know, Azovstal. And then you start to go into more depth of Mariupol, the more dominoes you knock down, and generally you start talking about the theatre, the maternity ward, you know, Ilich, and the bigger picture. So for me, at that level, there's that aspect of it. To say that it was only full of Azov Brigade is not true. It was full of friends of mine from the Marines, National Guard, the police, civilians. So it does represent everybody. And the other aspect of it is that when you see those prisoner exchanges taking place, the first thing they get behind, the pictures and the coverage, is about the flag of Ukraine. But the next picture you will probably see is behind their own unit, Marines, National Guard, police. So it is a lot down to the units to account for their guys and push for their guys and campaign for their guys back. It's only natural. So you will probably be able to talk more about the overall picture of that.
I totally agree with you, because sure, the Azovstal Defenders were not only Azov soldiers. It also included a lot of defenders, or a lot of soldiers from different units.
Actually, I have a question for you. Maybe you know better. There was there really a special, how you say, relation in terms of exchange, the exact Azov at that time, regiment soldiers, because at one point it completely stopped after first group of people came back to Ukraine, and then recently, I think October 19th, the group of people from Azov, now Brigade, came back to Ukraine. So does it really exist, the special, I don't know, hatred or special relation towards people from Azov Brigade?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I totally agree that there is particular hatred or especially harsh treatment of Azov prisoners of war, because the unit holds symbolic weight for Russians. It was one of the volunteer battalions that prevented Ukraine from falling in the beginning of the war. I mean, 2014. Yeah. The defense of Mariupol in 2014, the liberation of Mariupol in 2014, the unit has great history, making it, making it the target for propaganda, for hatred, for all kind of,
Putin's false narrative,
sure,
basically.
Yeah. So I agree with that, and because of this, this is the reason why Azov soldiers are being exchanged very rarely. Yeah, you said that last time the Azov soldiers were exchanged was in October. Then before that it was September this year, and before that it was May 2023. So more than a year and a half. And actually, I think that Russians decided to put Azov soldiers on the exchange list is because of the success of Kursk operation, yeah, they are not very likely to to exchange Azov soldiers, unfortunately.
And the mentality is that they want to keep the good guys; they don't want to put them or recirculate them back in. So you've got to remember that Russia's job is to put pressure on Zelensky, and what better way to do that than to hold prisoners until they need somebody, until they want somebody, which you alluded to, the recent invasion, the recent occupation of the Kursk area, and then they will initiate an exchange. So it's part of their game, it's part of their strategy to delay exchanges.
Since we touched this topic already, we understand Russia's relation to Azov. Question actually to both of you guys, but I guess first to Nestor. So what are the main misconceptions that you've encountered in Western media? First about Azov Brigade, and then about the war in Ukraine, basically.
That's a huge topic to discuss. Yeah, let's
try to make it.
Try to divide it in a few sections. Some misconceptions about Azov are a product or products of Russian propaganda. The myths about Azov and myths about Ukraine are fueled by Russian oil dollars and billions of investments in those false narratives. The first one, the most popular, is far-right Nazi ideology of Azov. Actually, denazification was one of the goals of the war that Putin declared at the very beginning of the war. This propaganda and this narrative was, to some extent, I would say to a huge extent, it was successful, because Azov was stripped of Western arms and Western training since 2017, and the ban was lifted by the US only this summer. Now we hope that the situation will change. So this narrative was very successful. Same now, the Russians are still saying that Ukraine is a Nazi country, trying to disrupt the Western aid, actually. Because the topic is very sensitive for the Western communities. So that is the first and main, I would say, misconception or myth we've encountering as the country and as the brigade as well.
Very much so. And that's where I step in, because I'm married to Ukrainian. We lived in Mariupol. We had a house in the left bank. Paid my taxes here. It was an intricate part of the military here long before the invasion. And You know, I was not really a social media guy or a commentator in any sort of way. I absolutely detest it in a way, but it's a necessity now because you're combating Russian propaganda. So when they talk about, another one was coming to save the Russian speakers. Well, you know, I am a Russian speaker originally because you know, it's fair to say that most people spoke Russian in Mariupol as a first language. However, my wife is a Ukrainian who speaks Russian Ukrainian. My community were identified as being Ukrainian. I'm a Russian speaker from Eastern Ukraine, just born in London, only because I had no formal education. I have to make my excuses and apologies, but I listened to everybody else around me. So I listened to what was the best and quickest way to communicate with people. And then because I was in the military, I had to stay under the radar. So I really couldn't sort of be in the public eye and the media as much as I am now. But since then, you know, my following on social media has really rocketed only because of the fact I fight those false narratives. I report from the ground in Ukraine. I live in Ukraine. And I get, you know, that's come with a big following now because of that. Not because I do sort of any content or TikTok content or anything like that, but just generally because I talk about, well, that's not actually true, you know, and put some reasoning behind it. And we've seen that information more claw back over the last couple of years since I've been exchanged, because we're able to fight those narratives that Russia prepared for sort of 2 years before the full-scale invasion.
In your both opinion, how come Russia is still so successful in putting their narratives out, and so many people actually believe it and bite for it?
Well, it's a good question without getting myself litigated or So, yeah, I mean, they had 2 years, as I alluded to, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years to prepare for the invasion. They knew they were coming in. So they brought in all these Western accented propaganda guys to go and tell this narrative, be paid to spill this narrative, to resonate with the West prior to the full-scale invasion. I can name several people from England, America, who are now spouting this garbage, who really don't really understand Ukraine or the culture or where I lived.
If you want, you can name.
No, but they know who they are because they'll probably text me.
But it's up to you.
But well, I mean, the high-profile one with Aidan Aslin, who was interviewed by Graham Phillips. It's the most uncomfortable watch you will ever see. You know, for me, we'll touch on it later, but for me, you know, you're not given a choice if you want to talk to these people when you're in captivity, but you are, you know, you're pushed in front of them with no choice. And they are an extension, like for Russia today, is an extension of the government. It's their media arm. So they want to push that. There's no way you can get it. I write on my social media, they're an intricate part in the torture process. Because one, you're not given a chance to worm your way out of it. Two, they're interrogating you with the very people in the room who are doing the torturing, the electrocutions, the starvations. So they're behind the camera. So, you know, you're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place where you have to sort of become a politician in a way, as to be quite grey and bland. But alternatively, you know, you've got to still not denounce your loyalties to Ukraine. So it's a very difficult situation to be in when you're being used for propaganda. And they use that propaganda now. They send it out now, pictures of me now. So I'm able to sort of say, well, that's a perfect example of resistance training that you didn't know I had. Because it's quite bland, and that's really important to train these guys up on how to deal with propaganda if they are unlucky enough to get captured. Mm.
I would also like to reflect on that. I think that the Russians were preparing for the invasion since mid-zeros, mid-20,000s, or maybe even earlier. Yeah. Putin came to power. A few years have passed. Then he decided, especially after it became evident after the Putin's Munich speech in 2007. Mm. So Russia have been investing a lot to, you know, in the narrative that it cannot be defeated. or on the narrative about its great culture that is better than all other cultures that were part of Russian Empire or Soviet Union. Russians invaded Georgia. Then the next step in the escalation ladder, if I may, was 2014, Crimea and Donetsk, and then the next step was the full-scale invasion. And they will do more. They, if the West and if Ukraine will not be able to contain them or to defeat them, then they will go and challenge NATO or even more. Thanks
for this answer. I must ask for a pardon. We need to break for a few seconds just to fix some technical issues. So if that's okay with you, just let's have a sip of water, and guys, we'll be back shortly. And I wanted to speak about the project that I guess you were taking a part of. It's called Moscow Conventions, as a reference to Geneva Conventions, which it criticizes quite heavily ICRC and the UN for maybe insufficient actions. So could you introduce the project and say, did you get any reaction so far?
Yeah, thanks for the question. Indeed, this is the allusion for this Moscow Convention, is the allusion to the Third Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. And the idea of this book was to show how, the international humanitarian law foresees the treatment of prisoners of war, and then to show the reality, how the rules and how the provisions are applied. And the idea of this book is actually to take particular articles of the Third Geneva Convention. For example, the prisoners of war have to be treated humanely, and then we rephrase it that the prisoners of war shall be subject to torture and provide testimonies of of people who were prisoners of war. Of course, we highlight and we emphasize that the ICRC is not doing anything. It's part of the bigger picture that the international humanitarian law is not working, and the whole security architecture of our continent is not working at all. Russia is still the member of the United Nations Security Council, for example. It's just a part of the picture. The mechanisms that were established after the Second World War, for example, the Third Geneva Convention, is not working, and we still don't have, and I think other countries that established and came up with the idea of the Third Geneva Convention, they don't know what to do when they used to live in the international humanitarian law, within the boundaries of it. However, when the nuclear superpower is waving nukes in their face or in our face, we don't have an answer what to do. What to do with the prisoners of war, with the human rights and etc. So this book is actually highlighting the harsh reality that our prisoners of war are being kept in. We make references with the Third Geneva Convention relative to the treatment of prisoners of war. And we say that this Moscow Convention is now the main source actually of the law for the prisoners of war, which is actually possible because of the silent agreement from these civilized countries that agreed to live within the reality of the Moscow Convention.
So I guess my second part about did you have any reaction is kind of irrelevant, because I assume you didn't have any reaction from these organizations that you stated, or was there, I don't know, was there any kind of response?
ICRC is very silent. It's resistant to public shame. It's very silent to such books or such events. If I'm not mistaken, the representatives of the ICRC were invited to the presentation of this book. Guess whether they showed up or not. So we don't have any reaction yet, and the ICRC reacts rarely on this kind of such kind of things.
Thank you, Shaun. Obviously, you have a lot, I guess, to add in this topic. I heard such cases that ICRC, one of their duties, it was to inform the families of prisoners of war, whether the person is dead, live, or being transferred. And I even heard stories that if it wasn't for actual prisoners of war, like those who were exchanged, they they could tell to families of those who are still in captivity whether their loved ones alive, dead, tortured, not tortured. So yeah, could you? How would you rate the work of these two organizations?
My friend John Harding just going loopy now, going, "Tell him, Shaun, tell him." So there's a lot to break down there. First of all, when I was captive, through my whole time in captivity, we were given no access to any humanitarian aid groups, none at all. We didn't even have toothbrush, toothpaste or anything, up until the point we changed prisons just before the trial. And then we managed to get some just basic washing gear, and that was it. Not so much as even clothes were donated. We had to get them off fellow prisoners who just didn't like the way we were being treated. Secondly, my family had good updates through our Foreign Office. You've got to remember at the time the Russians were trying to get Britain more involved and be responsible for us, but through the interrogations that we were forced to make to Boris Johnson and various other news media outlets, we sort of had to diplomatically say that our governments won't deal with you, and be careful what I say here, because one, we initially thought we were taken as a prisoner of war, we then eventually became a hostage because they wanted, obviously, Viktor Medvedchuk. And that's quite easy to see when you're in captivity. So you have to be very careful about the words you use, like a terrorist or hostage or anything like that. You're not a prisoner of war. I don't know what you are. If they wouldn't let me use the word hostage. We had, and that came about because Hostage International is a good charity that helps you in recovery after you've been exchanged, who specialise in that sort of area. So I got wind that they were talking to my family for a call we made back home while I was in captivity, and the response was, hostage? What do they think we are, terrorists? Now you can imagine being the other side of that when you're in captivity with a camera looking at you. You have to be very careful about how you handle that. So that being said, my family had no dealings with the International Red Cross as far as I know. They still, even after my exchange, haven't even contacted my family or us, or that I know about. So in regards to that, I think this is, you know, it's endemic. It's not. I'm not going to blame them entirely, because if Russia doesn't want them to have access to you, then you're not going to have access to them. If they don't want the Red Cross to, then unfortunately the Red Cross, I assume their hands are tied slightly. Yeah. I know. Sorry. And then the last bit I was just going to talk about, talking to my friend who was at Azov style. He said the Red Cross were an intricate part of the surrender deal. And he's very hatred. He's got so much hatred for the Red Cross because he said they were there, part of the surrender deal, Azov style, and he was segregated, filtered off, and then taken to Donetsk, never to be seen again, with nobody even contacting him. So you know that's from his view. He has a lot of hatred for the Red Cross.
Yeah, the Red Cross failed so many times. It failed to register as prisoners of war all those defenders of Azovstal that went into captivity actually under high command and under the guarantees of the UN and the ICRC. So Ukraine lost track of a lot of, or maybe of most of Azovstal defenders actually. The ICRC just does not fulfill its mandate and does not, have access, as you said. And we know there's a lot of room for way more efforts by the ICRC, which it is not doing. The ICRC never condemned Russian war crimes or the breach of Geneva Convention on the prisoners of war, and also it never publicly stated on international platforms that. They cannot just gain access to or go to Russia or do whatever to fulfill its mandate.
There's almost like a code of silence between a lot of agencies about what's actually happening here. You can see the reports, but none of the people that should be saying something are saying anything. You can look at Antonio Guterres, for instance. The statements are very few and far between, if that. You can look at a lot, and the UN do some good work. It's wrong to chastise everybody, but in recent events, it just doesn't say anything. There's very little statements going out. People are starting to realise that and starting to ask those questions. Where is the International Red Cross? Why is the UN not saying anything that it should be saying about Ukraine? And emphasising those reports, they're not saying anything about them. So why? Why are they not saying anything about them? So, it's important to raise those topics on social media now and things like that, and get people talking about that. And also, again, you have to go back to this year when the Americans have found Russian money influence in certain companies within entertainment companies in the US. How far does that go? And they have a major influence over the generation and the people in the younger generation in the US. So if they're telling, like Tim Paul, they're all Nazis in Ukraine, they're going to listen to that, and who's fighting that? So it's important we fight that, because it's just frankly not true, And
the last comment on the ICRC on this topic is that we have to admit that Ukrainian Red Cross is doing a great job. We have to distinguish Ukrainian Red Cross, International Red Cross, ICRC, and International Committee of Red Cross, and also the Russian Red Cross, which is tied with the government, which is financed by the government. And the funny thing I came across when I read a few investigations into what is Russian Red Cross. One of the leaders or the head of the Russian Red Cross before joining Russian Red Cross at the beginning of the war, he was part of the board or board member of the organization that holds trademark on the Z sign, which is hilarious. You know, it's very hard to talk about the Red Cross, reputation and the Red Cross capability or whatever. When you see facts like that, and he's still there, he's still head of Russian Red Cross. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
But I was given access to the War Crimes Commission in the UK. Were very quick to take statements off me, and that took a couple of weeks. Still going on now when we find new bits of information. But they were very good at documenting that. The Metropolitan Police in the UK are working with them on that. And they didn't just do me, they were doing a lot, all the guys that were exchanged that went back to the UK and Ukrainians that are actually now living in the UK. So they're taking all these statements down.
That leads us to, I have several questions from our subscriber on Instagram with the nickname Janet Jennifer. So she's asking basically which countries are helping to free Azov fighters, for how long, and what measures, if any, have these countries taken in moving forward to free Azov? So I'm sure you mentioned the UK. Do we have any allies? Do you guys have any allies? The ones that you can actually rely on? Sure.
There was the prominent ministerial event in Canada a few weeks ago, or a month-ish ago. And a lot of countries, they decided to join the initiative to bring the Azov soldiers and Ukrainian prisoners of war back. However, we're still, I would say, Western countries are still unfriendly to Russia, as Russia calls them. So they don't have a lot of instruments to do this, or maybe I cannot comment because I don't know about a lot of diplomatic ways they used to facilitate the exchanges. But what they can do actually is, for example, there was the political exchange between Germany, the US, Belarus, and Russia recently. Not recently, I think it was summer, when Putin got back his killer Krasikov. And then he was exchanged for, there was a political exchange of political prisoners. We believe that Azov soldiers should be included in such exchanges as well. And unfortunately, maybe not unfortunately, but there are still political prisoners in Russia. And we think that this instrument can work. Also, such, not Western countries, but like other countries that used to be platforms for the exchange, we also have to, those instruments also work, and those countries also have capacity. I cannot comment more about that because, yeah, sure. That's not actually our authority, or that's not our mandate. But I think that, I believe that those are pretty good instruments. Shaun, now to you, so there is a lot of facts when the prisoners of war in captivities were forced to maybe record some videos or sing Russian anthems and such for Russian propaganda. Do you know of such cases, and did it happen to you personally?
Yeah, absolutely. We just talked to one earlier about Ada Nazanin being forced to talk to British journalists. So yeah, and myself was pulled out for propaganda quite a bit in those early days.
What did you...
Well, I'd had training, so generally I'd come up with a set of objectives. One, I wanted to get on TV to tell the world where I was, so I wasn't too worried about that. And also it's a good time for me to try and get something to sustain my life, because at that time for 60 days, we only had bread every other day, if we were lucky. So if we were being poured out for propaganda at 9 o'clock in the morning and the bread came in at 10 o'clock, then we were missing that bread for that day. And we went for 3 or 4 days at that point, not eating a thing. And when we would do the videos, pretty much like the same setup here, we would go in there and they would film us and they would give us a burger and film us and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is how we treat you. This is, and it's dehumanizing, it's degrading. When the cameras are in there, the very people that are doing the torture are in the room, who know the journalist. So in my case, Roman Kazarev, who's a very known RT guy, knew all my torturers who were beating the crap out of me. And you only have to, when I was taken home, you could see all the pictures of the scars that the War Crimes Commission took the pictures of all the scars that I had. So yeah, it's when you're being dehumanised and being stripped of humanity. Sometimes, if you haven't had any training, I was lucky enough that I could work the system a bit and try and get that.
Did you have a chance maybe to speak to other, I don't know, fellow prisoners of war who didn't have training? Did you have a possibility to somehow support them, or were you...
Yeah, but I had to not become... I couldn't really tell anybody my background in my cell because, one, they would take you out to do propaganda and then they would beat the guys up in your cell to try and find what information you'd told them. So nobody in your cell was a friend, if you know what I mean. You had to be very careful with the information. And secondly, you find yourself the only one with any sort of idea. So you become a sounding board for people in the same environment. And if you're deemed to be a leader within that group, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. So the idea is that you have to remain grey in the background and not become that leader, but gently help people in other ways, you know. And explain as well how the torture system, Russians don't use torture like you see in the movies. It's not torture to get information through pain. What they do for us, what they wanted to do for us, was torture us to get us to admit to things we didn't do and places we weren't at. And that is a very effective way how they use torture, which is why you see everybody being pulled for the sham trials pleading guilty. There's no one saying not guilty because it's electrocution, stabbing, starvation, sleep deprivation. You know, the list goes on. And they're using that to get the soldiers to plead guilty because they just want that pain to stop. And that's how the judicial system worked for me. And then they put you out on RT, which is a state-run organisation. They're pumping you out to millions of people before your trial to get trial by public opinion. And that's how they do it. So, of course, the decision's already been made by the Russian people. Oh, look, we've got mercenaries guilty. I never set foot outside the country I had legal status in. How can I be a mercenary? I'm married to Ukrainian, pay my taxes here. Yet I was tried as a Nazi mercenary and a terrorist, you know.
So that's what they were convicting you of? Yeah. Could we speak a little bit of this trial by the Donetsk People Republic, like from, I guess, from the beginning? And I guess I'm going to ask this: in your opinion, how did you get out? Because like you've been sentenced to death, right? Yeah.
Well, initially I was captured, which is the most dangerous part of your whole process. The initial capture. I knew that if I got through that, then it may get a bit easier. But from the point of capture, where I was captured by DPR soldiers, I was then handed to the Russians. So they had they had all the knowledge that they captured, because I was handed to them. How do I know that? Because they had Russian fatigue. Didn't have patches on, but they all looked totally different from the soldiers of the Donetsk People's Republic. And these were specialists who then sent me and handed me back, once they'd finished with me, handed me back to the Donetsk People's Republics in Donetsk. If you talk to other cellmates I was with, they were interviewed by colonels of the Russian military and prosecutors of the Russian military. And then suddenly a decision was made that we were going to be used in a sham trial and sent to Donetsk People's Republic. So generally... like I said, the aim at that time was they wanted to draw Britain into war and recognise the Donetsk People's Republic as a state, and they had hostages to do that. We were used as a tool. And that's basically how they used us at that time. If you fast forward several months, I had no idea I was actually going anywhere. Several things happened. We got put on a trial and got the death penalty, which was a total sham trial, and in 2 days we were given a death penalty. So, you know, it was just ridiculous. My lawyer, I was told, was a lawyer, was a man, and when I went to trial, turned out to be a woman I'd only met once before, who never even introduced herself to me as a lawyer, never came and took a statement, never took the contracts that my family had sent and the Ukrainian government had sent to Russia to say I was a Ukrainian soldier. So, you know, it was a loaded trial straight from the off with theatrics and everything. So, that being said, we were settling in. But I had that death penalty over my head. So from July through to September, I didn't know if I was going to get an appeal or whether I was going to be shot that day. So then we were just told around September the 21st that we were going on a long journey, and the process, we didn't realise we were going to be exchanged until the door shut on the plane and explained to us what was happening.
Sorry, yeah, that's just too much. That's just too much to prove.
I talk about it like a matter of fact because I've talked about it a dozen times, written a book about it, I go on the news, so it comes across as a matter of fact. But it's, you know, it's very serious, still hurts. It's you know, very emotional. Most of my battalion's still captive, so you know we're still working to get those guys out, and we know that they've been in 3 years, so they're going to be in a terrible state, you know, and there's not much we can really do about it.
I would like to speak about what we can actually do, like as a separate blog, a little bit later, just to make like a I don't know, to focus on it. In the meantime, I have another question to you, Nestor. So recently, the Institute for the Study of War stated that Russian forces continue to systematically perpetrate war crimes in relation to a recent spike in killing of Ukrainian prisoners of war just straight on the battlefield. Is there any reaction from international law community, or is it just happening as it's happening, and there is, you know, a silence?
Unfortunately, there are so many war crimes. As I said, because the international humanitarian law is not working, I don't think that the international community reacts to every single one of them.
But there has been, I mean, there has been really a spike. It's just like a new tendency or trend. There is like obviously for us as the Ukrainians, it cannot go unnoticed. But does anyone else see it as a new like huge trend that has to be dealt with? I don't know.
Yeah, it has to lead to more investigation. It has to lead to, you know, more arms transferred to Ukraine, and it has to, you know, it has to make the help or the financial and military aid bigger for Ukraine. Hopefully, it will happen sometimes, but I don't think that this spike is somehow influencing the international partners right now. At least I haven't seen the direct reaction to those, unfortunately.
No, it's systemic. It's coming from the highest levels of the Kremlin. It's systemic. You know, it's they're using the same equipment, so somebody's teaching them how to do it. You know, TAPEX, they're using the field phones to be able to electrocute people. You go into basements of places, they've found these torture facilities with exactly the same equipment. The policy's the same. You know, they want to execute Ukrainian soldiers on the front line because somebody's ordering that. And when you've been captive, you see that process, that industrial pipeline that's involved in the torture. Just makes you want to come and do stuff like this, you know, on TV and tell the world what's actually going on, because people don't really understand. And you've only got this week with what's happening in Syria, with the prison there, to see the similarities that almost set my memories going, seeing some of the pictures from there, which is really emotional, because you can relate to that. People held, you know, lots of amount of people in a 1 metre by 3 metre cell who haven't seen the light of day for, is exactly the same thing. I was held in a black site, underground, for 60 days, only eating the specks of bread. You know, and that's not just me, that's everybody saying the same thing. It's systemic, and nobody's really sort of pushing that in the media.
Yeah, and actually I advise or I suggest to visit this Moscow Convention site, which is moscowconvention.com.
We're going to share it under the description so everyone could read testimonials, I guess.
Yes, yes.
Firsthand from people
and yeah, that's
who've
actually
been there.
Yeah, and that's terrifying how the treatment is, how the actual treatment is.
Mm.
Yeah. I know, Shaun, is it true that you're planning to visit Russian POWs in Ukraine?
Yeah, I've been asked. We're still yet to confirm if that's possible, but I've been asked and I would love to go and
why?
Obviously... Why?
What you're going to... like why and what you're going to talk about?
Well, I'm certainly not going to go in what most people think, go in there and start, electrocuting people. It's just not going to happen, No, I really do want to just see how we treat in comparison. I've been asked to write an article for a newspaper to talk about that and about the differences in the treatment of prisoners, talk to maybe some of the prisoners, find out what their motivations are for fighting, really sort of understand what's driven them here, and then maybe talk about the situation here compared to my captivity, see what their reaction is to that. But I understand more than anybody what it is like to be a prisoner. And I've also seen the propaganda on the Russian side, which pumps out all this lies that, we're fighting NATO in Ukraine. No, there's no NATO troops on the ground here, son. So, it's able to dispel those narratives that they've been told is going on here, and be able to have a chance to talk to them one-to-one. When I was in captivity, there was a guy that really did help me, who fought in the Bolshevik for the Donetsk People's Republic. Well, my worst case, I had very bad dysentery. I was in a very, very bad way. And he didn't need to help me, but he gave me vitamins and medicine, a set of clothes his wife brought in, and just said, we're not all monsters. Now, humanity, some people just don't like the way you're being treated, and I want to go and see how they're being treated by us, so I can then put a comparison in place and then to go and tell as many people as I can what's happening in Ukraine.
Right. We're gonna I'll come back to you very soon. I have another question for Shaun. I know it's actually the question from Instagram community, from someone called Sign My Grenade.
I know who that is.
Right. Dear Shaun, after you return from the captivity, you are supporting Ukraine in various ways. What are you currently working on? And do you also support fundraisers from other volunteers apart of the ones that you are initiating?
We don't fight anymore. I've got problems, long-term problems with the injuries sustained in my captivity. I've got a problem with the spine, back, digestive system. Nothing serious. I can't see out of my right eye properly from the battle in Mariupol, so I have to wear glasses for the rest of my life. So I'm carrying those injuries around with me, but they should clear up. 2 years later, I've still got problems with my back. So I can do more damage now, doing what I'm doing now, talking about the atrocities, talking about what happened to us, raising awareness of the POWs. I also do a lot of humanitarian work. I work with Chris, who who's a founder of Prevail, a demining charity, humanitarian aid charity, with two main focus really on mine awareness with civilians and demining training with government agencies of Ukraine, including the police. Also, we have a humanitarian side of it where we have ambulances that help stabilise casualties at stabilisation points and bring them back to hospitals and help with the transport of those casualties back from the front lines, civilian or military, or back to hospitals. So we try and we're sort of hand to mouth at the moment with money, so we're looking for long-term donors, and we do a lot of charity work, including I help support Brave You, who's a charity here in Ukraine, with funding for beds, stretcher beds for the military and civilian side. So yeah, I'm really busy with that and the media, and also I sort of go back to my roots and help train and talk to armies across the NATO about being in capture and resistance and what it's like and what they can expect when they come to work in Ukraine or talk to Ukrainians, what the culture's like here, things like that. My wife jokes and says, "What do you know about Ukraine? You know nothing about Ukraine." Well, I know more than most. It's like but yeah, I'm able to really talk about my capture and what works and what's not changed in 30 years. I did my training 30 years ago, and not much has changed on the Russian side, to be fair. So I'm able to sort of critique on that and talk to people about that.
I'm pretty sure many of people would ask this. Not me personally, I understand why you do this, but wouldn't it be easier for you to go back home and just, I don't know, take care of your health and, I don't know, for the rest of your life try to, I don't know, relax and take rest? So basically my question...
It's a good question because it gets brought up, and I don't understand still to this day why people are quite understanding of the fact that people from Syria come to the UK to avoid the war. People from Africa come to the UK and Europe to avoid conflict there. And why people still don't understand why a Brit guy would be living in Ukraine with a Ukrainian wife and join the military here when it was my background for so long in the British military.
You could have a nice pension, just, you know.
I want to extend my, I mean, it's a minute, and I tell people there's nothing like a spring and a summer in Ukraine. I'm married to Ukrainian. You know, I didn't have a schooling in academic schooling. So my schooling was the military. I could give something back after, you know, Crimea was annexed, and I could give something back to the military. My friend Chris sort of said, we're looking for instructors down in Mariupol, and it became my home. I had a house on the left bank, married a Ukrainian, my community was here. So essentially I spent more time here than I ever did in England. 5 years before I went back to England. My family came to Kiev, and so really it became my home. And then I think when they asked me and said, Shaun, the Battle of Mariupol, do you want to go, like you just did? And I said, no, these are my friends that I've been working with for 5 years, my colleagues, my family. Mariupol was my home. I certainly, you know, don't regret that decision. You have to spend a long time living with yourself, you know, and I don't think I could have lived with myself if I'd have just deserted and left them all there fighting in Mariupol. So, and then you want to get that all back and help them. I can't help really fight now so much, but I can fight in a different way. So taking Russia to court was one way to do it, and win a landmark case there, start the process there, hopefully get money for the victims of war, humanitarian, any way I can to help the guys on the front line fighting a very hard war for democracy, really, fighting for democracy.
Before we move to our final block where we could speak how we actually can help, raise awareness, do whatever anyone can do to help those who are in captivity, I have another very difficult question to you. It's going to be about Olenivka terrorist act. We call it in Ukraine like Olenivka tragedy. What is happening with this case now in terms of international law, accountability? If you could give us an update on that.
As I said, the prominent Ukrainian NGOs that issued the statement yesterday, they urged the International Criminal Court to start the investigation. I think that now the International Criminal Court is the best instrument or the best international mechanism to, hold the guilty accountable for the Olenivka tragedy. I think that we should now focus on that. Maybe some other tribunal ideas will come up in the future. However, now, currently, this is the best thing that we have right now. Hopefully, the ICC will start investigating this tragedy. It already had good cases with Lvova, Belova, and Putin. They issued orders, arrest orders for those two criminals because of kidnapping. And now it would be nice that the ICC, investigate this case as well.
Right. Thanks. Okay, let's move on to something more inspiring, lighthearted. So basically, the general question: how can a person, regular person, our viewer somewhere abroad, help Free Azov Defenders movement? what are these simple actions? Because I know there are a few, but I would like you guys to give your answers.
Would you like to start?
I can, on a personal level, yeah. I mean, you just have to see the pictures that are taken of the POWs that come out of camps, circulate them on social media, tell everybody about what's going on. You know, those pictures of the emaciated, pale, skinny prisoners have resonated really well. We don't see enough of them spread out on social media talking about that, raising that issue. What you could do is support online the families if you want to do that. I speak to a lot of the families of the current POWs, from Marines through to Azov guys. Reassure them, even to the point of, you know, point them in the direction of charities where they can get funding. You know, they're not going to replace loved ones or anything like that, but you know, some people have nothing, so you can help that way. You probably got more of an official route, I guess. Yeah,
I would like to emphasize once again that spreading the word and raising awareness within the decision makers, politicians, academics, whatever, helps a lot. I mean that's regarding our European viewers or our European partners. That's the good way to do this. In Ukraine as well, take part in Free Azov Defenders movements, rallies. That helps as well. Regarding the international communities or Western communities, war is not far away. It's not Ukrainian war. It's our war for of the civilized world against dictatorship axis that formed already. The war is not far away. It's not only Ukrainian matter, because of course, you know, they will move forward. They will try to challenge NATO and Western countries. So just support the armed forces and support Azov.
I completely understand, but sometimes people are, you know, maybe lazy or not creative enough to write a post. Maybe you could recommend several, I don't know, like pages on X. Maybe like some simple actions like tagging this person or that person. Maybe we could simplify it and make it easier for those who are interested. What would be your recommendation in that way?
That's a good question. Do you have any ideas?
We will definitely, we will definitely write it down, and we'll do our part as well.
I just met Lubinets in Lviv. He's a good person to follow as a human rights commissioner for Ukraine, I believe. Dmitry Lubinets. So I just met him at the conference, and they're putting together a strategy for veterans. As I said, 1.3 million veterans now, and ever increasing. So they need a strategy to deal with that. You can follow that, a lot of the problems at that conference regarding veterans were raised, including information on prisoners of war and various other topics about, you know, injury recovery, prosthetics. They need prosthetics. So you can follow lots of different aspects to veterans on there. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head now straight away about other sort of, follow the relative websites. I mean, you can follow 36 Marine Brigade on Facebook and people like that, through to Azov on social media, so, and National Guard as well. So you can follow what's happening on those platforms.
And as we learned during the Revolution of Dignity, that you know, we're all drops in the ocean, and whatever. There's no little donation. There's no little help if you're part of the bigger
process.
Yeah, yeah. So every little help will actually matter.
Another question to Shaun. Have you ever attended the Azov Defender rallies?
Once, yes, but I travel outside of Ukraine quite a bit. It's quite an emotional event, and especially when I know so many of them as well. And also, I don't, you know, we don't get a chance to process Mariupol at the moment. One, because we're still fighting the war. I think it's fair to say a lot of people aren't processing a lot of it. It's become normal for now. Everybody's affected in some way with this war. So it is quite emotional. Veterans Day, things like that. Not just that, but you know, all the other Memorial Days that we do remember this fight and not forget the sacrifices that everybody's making in this war. But yeah, it's very emotional. I don't go to enough as I should do. But you know, it's you've got to keep fighting, keep working, but yeah, if you get the chance to go, go, because it's a very emotional memorial.
For our viewers, I would like to emphasize that these rallies in Kiev, they happen every Sunday. In other places across the world, you can follow the social medias of Azovstal families, Free Azovstal Defenders movement. There are schedules. You can find all the information there. And I think our time is coming to an end. It was not the easiest talk. I don't know, for me personally, the topic is quite heavy, but I would like to thank you sincerely from all my heart, both of you, for what you are doing. It's super important to keep speaking about it, to do what you guys do. And to our viewers, we will post all the information that we speak about today about Moscow conventions. We'll share all the links, and please, 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 just follow them, just take a part of it, because as Nestor said, there is no small action. It all counts. We need your help. So thanks for watching us.
Thank you.